My name is Samuel Conway. I am a company called Correctional. We do lots of interesting things. And what I'm going to talk about today is one of my customers that we've done some work for, Department of Correctional Services in South Australia. They're a very interesting client, to say the least. So my role was primarily design of the system itself. I didn't do any build, didn't do anything at all, apart from actually help them understand what they need, what they wanted to build. That's what we're going to talk about today. So I'll give a bit of an introduction to Rixie, the company, then we're going to talk about the project, a bit of its background. I'll then talk about the aims of the system, and this is what David Brown, who is the Director of Correctional Services, basically gave us as far as what he was trying to achieve. We then look at some of the challenges, which are interesting. We look at the design plan that I came up with in order to get these guys on board, because there's significant cultural change that's occurring, and they're endeavouring to also, I guess, push through at the same time. Then we'll talk about the information sessions that I have with the guys. Then we'll talk about the VA work and design document we created, and then the selling the dream. When I actually started this company 3 years ago, I really wanted to focus on sort of generating that out-of-the-box functionality. But what I found is a lot of SharePoint developers are really good with the tool set. But when I was working for the last company I did as a quality engineer, basically I was sort of the national quality manager. I was in charge of building an ISO-based system so we could get national accreditation. So I was told to go and buy a document management system. I couldn't find one I liked, and then my budget was basically told I had nothing. So I, using SharePoint 2007, 18 months, I designed, built and implemented a document management system and an intranet and a few other bits and pieces. And I started to get a bit of interest from other clients with respect to that. But one of the things I needed to do in the beginning was come up with a way of putting these systems together, because what I found is that when you talk to people about SharePoint, people are really good with the tool set, but it was the actual business application where it started to get a bit cloudy, and I started to get developers and everyone saying, all you need to do is ask the company what their problems are. What are the issues you're trying to solve with SharePoint? But the problem, the issue that I had with that was the fact that I was the customer. I was the person who was building the system for my company, but I was also the client as well. I didn't know where to start. So what I came up with is focusing on the customer journey through the organisation, because for the type of organisation I was working on at the time, that really worked because it was manufacturing. So you could look at the beginning, initial customer interaction, sales, and then follow that all the way through to the end product. And what I found is that you then have the supporting features that sat around the outside. So basically for me it's about, it's a business application SharePoint, not an IT tool set. Up until 2 years ago, it was just me. In the last year I've grown to 6 people. I've got one guy in Italy. We're now doing work in the US, the UK. We're doing some work with Oxford University as well. So it's grown a lot the last year. Alright, client. Department of Correctional Services. I knew nothing about correctional services whatsoever. Probably not unassuming. What was that?
I don't believe you.
So, although I've got to admit, they did say to me that they would give me a quick tour of the facility if I like, because they'd go and get me arrested, then put me in prison, and I could spend a couple of days there and really learn how it works. So I could find that. Well, we talked to the director and the deputy director of correctional services, and they really talked about how, for them, it's all about a safer community, by protecting the public and reducing reoffending. So they've got lots of programs at the moment which are looking at how they do things and trying to really improve on their services. They have 1,600 staff, 9 prisons, 17 community and correction officers, and they're really trying to have a positive influence. But one of the things they haven't done for a lot of years is change internally. Now this is a very regimented organisation, and a lot of their processes and things that they've done, especially with technology in the organisation, hadn't really been updated for a long time. So they made a strategic decision about 2 years ago to update all of their IT systems, and included in that was their intranet. The current intranet that they've got, or that they're phasing out, is a simple HTML-based one that is shocking, to say the least. It is completely non-functional. One of the really interesting things about it is it has, each page has a public and a private page. So if it's a private page, meaning that it's got limited restricted views, or if it's a public page, stuff is just deleted off of it. So it looks like a patchwork quilt. So it really is not structured very well. And it was wholly and solely owned by the IT department. So we had a meeting with David Brown, and we talked about what he was actually wanting out of the system. And it was pretty generic in the fact that they wanted the intranet, they wanted a document management system, they wanted form solutions to start to automate things a bit better. They wanted workflows, they wanted to be available on multi-devices, which is pretty much what sort of you would expect to be asked. And they also wanted a platform that would grow with the business, because they really wanted to increase their ability to be able to communicate internally. Now, we've heard other presentations today talking about collaboration and what that means and how that all works. And this was a classic example of an organisation that was really struggling with that kind of stuff. The other thing I wanted to is they didn't necessarily want to rely on search to find all their documentation, because their documentation is really interesting from the fact that they have an issue with their current setup in the fact that they search for anything, they get 7 documents, which are effectively the same document. But because they're so regimented and structured and siloed with how they are, what that means is that they want to select the right document from the right functional area. So it gets very confusing very quickly. So they've got a lot of documents that they could reduce. Project challenges is the fun part. To say that they're a traditional government organisation is an understatement. They're very, very resistant to change. They have very low technology adoption. So when I say low technology adoption, I did hear a story that one of the Remand facilities up in north of South Australia, they sent them up 6 computers. You go, cool. They said to them, look, the IT department can't get up to internet, can't get up there. You can collaborate online much easier. They just go and about if you don't understand the platform, you have to build a solution on how can you possibly do anything. I wanted them to investigate their current processes and work out why and how they did what they currently did. And then I wanted them to analyse the customer journey through their organisation. Now, you'd think, okay, fair enough. Analyse the customer journey through the organisation. Pretty easy to find who the customer was. That presented a whole interesting hour-and-a-half conversation. And then as a team, I wanted them to design the solution. I wasn't going in there just to go and say, yeah, this is what we're going to build for you, because I didn't at the time understand how Department of Correctional Services work. Okay, so I was allocated a team of 15 people. You can imagine these guys are government workers. So they're very productive and work very hard. So they were brought into the room, and 20% of them were excited about what they were doing, the other 80% had no idea what they were doing. So that was an interesting mix to start off with. So the first session, basically I had a whiteboard and a pen, and they said, all right, let's go and design an intranet. Okay, so where should we start? So the first thing I really started was, what is an intranet and the aims of an intranet? I really wanted to start them from basics. So, I talk about what makes a good intranet, and you can do this research online, and obviously Google provides you lots of useful information based on the stuff I've done in the past. And also that it has to be usable to be used. So I introduced all these sort of concepts, and you can imagine that it's pretty dry sort of material, so like half of them will fall asleep, half of them are still interested. I then showed them some examples of intranets, a couple that I built, a couple that a few other people have built, a couple of people involved with the SharePoint conference, just to give them some examples of what could actually be achieved, because anything was better than what they currently had. So we didn't have a very high benchmark to jump over. I then introduced them to SharePoint 2013. We discussed what sites, pages, lists, libraries, and web parts were, and the difference between a list and library, which sometimes I question whether some SharePoint developers understand that, but that's another story. And then I did something to wake them up. I played the 5S game. Now, does anyone know what the 5S game is? No. Who here's worked in manufacturing before? That's why you don't know what the 5S game is. This is a really, really cool little exercise. This is a cool little exercise to do with guys who work on the shop floor, people with middle management, and also the senior managers. Because it's about productivity, it's about understanding the workplace. So 5S is basically a Japanese manufacturing principle, which is all about sort, set, in order, shine, standardise, and sustain. Oh, you're going to do that. So it's a little game. So what we do is get everyone around the table, and the following worksheet has numbers on it. Okay? Your job is to cross off numbers 1 to 49 in the correct sequence. Now the aim of that is to simulate a production day, or simulate a day of work. And you're going, why are we actually doing this? You'll see. So we do the first one, we give them, I don't know, 10 seconds or whatever it is. Cross off 1 to 49, bottom left, top right. Okay? Now the cool part about this is while they're actually doing this exercise, I'll walk up to people and go, hey, how's your day? What have you been up to today? Been fun? You work, how was your weekend? That kind of thing. So you distract people. But you're only ever as good as your weakest link in the team. Okay? So that person that I've distracted, they might get one done if I let them. But if not, that's all that they've effectively produced for the day. So you can start to see that, if you've got a chaotic workplace, how can you expect people to get stuff done if they're interacting as well? So, of course, they don't score very well. So we're going to sort the numbers. Let's take some of them away. We obviously had numbers 50 to 90 there as well. We didn't need them because we only needed cross off numbers 1 to 49. So we've taken those numbers away. Once again, same sort of exercise. It's still difficult. It's still challenging. It's still not easy to do what you're trying to do. Okay? Once again, we only probably get 1, maybe 2. So now we're going to set them in order. So we work out that we're going to apply a grid to it. Now, the cool part about this particular slide is I generally take less than 30 seconds to go through it. So I'll quickly read out what they've got to do. And it is confusing. It's very confusing. And it's fantastic because it demonstrates that if you don't have clear understanding or clear documentation with respect to the roles and jobs that you're supposed to be doing, how do you expect your employees or anyone else to do it? So once again, now cross off numbers 1 to 49. There's a bit of a sequence here. So now you probably get people to do 6 or 7 of them. So you can see that things are starting to work a bit better. Now we're going to standardise. Okay? So now it's about putting some real rules and regulations with respect to how we're going to set out our data and our information and then cross them off. And of course, you can imagine that when we get to this stage, crossing off 1 to 49 bottom left, top right is pretty easy. Anyone think that they wouldn't be able to do that in 15 seconds? Please let me know now. So you can see how we've taken a massive data that makes no sense whatsoever, and we've now transformed it into something that anyone can do. It's an intuitive way to do it, and it's understandable. So that's pretty good. The next exercise is we've taken away 2 numbers, because we're going to do a quality audit. We're going to check the quality of the system that we built. So you can imagine we say, okay, we've taken away 2 numbers. Let's find those 2 numbers. You've got 30 seconds to find those 2 numbers. No one's ever found the 2 numbers. I think someone guessed once right, but generally no. Now if we go back to what we've done before and we put the same process in order, you can now see the 2 numbers that are missing. Okay? Now you're probably thinking, that's cool, cool little exercise, could be a bit of fun. We'll go back to there we go. Why on earth would I do that? Because what I wanted to show them is that there are ways of putting information together and there are ways of structuring things that you can start to make it logical for the organisation with which you work in. The cool part was they actually got this. Because the next thing that I asked them to do, remember these are government workers, is I gave them homework. I was told the chances of me getting a response were Buckley's and none. Alright? They all did it. Not only did they all do the homework, they all actually thought about it. So I knew at some point I must have got some buy-in from them. And they must have really understood what we were trying to achieve here. And the questions I asked them, there was quite a few. So basically I asked them, what does your organisation do? What is the role of your organisation? What are the functional areas of your business where you work? What's good about your current intranet? What's bad about it? What's not there? What have you had to do to work around your intranet to do your job? Okay. The other thing I asked them is, tell us something about SharePoint 2013. So I'm really starting to lead them through what we're trying to achieve, what we're trying to build. So we've got some really, really good results. Although I've got to admit, at the end of the day, I didn't think that was probably more apt for some of them. Right, so we reviewed the homework. Now you've got to remember, I asked them a lot of questions about the organisation because the next thing I wanted to do is I'd show them what intranet should be and how they can work and all that kind of stuff. I wanted to understand their organisation, and I wanted them to understand the organisation. You know, it's really interesting when I've done these sort of things with companies before, and you have like a management team, or you have a group of employees within the organisation, and you start to map out how the organisation works from a customer perspective and breaking down the silos. You get one manager from another team going, I didn't realise you did that. Oh, okay. Or, you know, a classic example was when I was at the steel company, I had someone in production say, we always send these particular dockets back because the paperwork's wrong. And the sales team said, we didn't know the paperwork was wrong, you've never told us. You know, it starts to bring up those sort of things because we're trying to think of as a process through the organisation. So we did an organisational review, we looked at the organisation from a whole, we outlined what the organisation did, we looked at critical processes and the supporting processes around the middle. And then we looked at roles and what people did. And then we got back to the question of who is your customer? Who's the customer for the Department of Correctional Services? Exactly. Is that right, science? Evidently, for the Department of Correctional Services, everyone else was a customer but the prisoner. And we talked about this for 45 minutes. And I'm just going, you're not getting it, you're not getting it. But they didn't see it. And after I let them go for a while, I said, okay, the customer is the prisoner, the person you're locking up. The guy's going to arrest you, he's going to spend a couple of nights in prison, or you know, someone who's done something more serious. And they said, no, that can't be the case. I said, if you don't have prisoners, do you have a job? And they went, well, yeah, we've got these supporting services. I said, no. You have no supporting services. So once they kind of got that and started to understand that, it really started to open up what we were looking at. Of course, we then had the next hurdle, the IT department. So the IT department said, look, in the design session, he piped up and he said, Sam, we're designing it all wrong. Okay, thanks for that. So what are we doing wrong? And he said, well, it should be the org chart, which we should be using as a structure of our SharePoint, not what we do as a business. Right. Any reason? And he said, oh, because that's how it's always been done and that's how it should be done. Okay. I then kept quiet for a few minutes. Everyone else attacked him. You don't understand the business. We're doing this the right way because this reflects what we actually do. Not that defined org structure that suits the government at the moment, which changes every 3 or 4 months, 6 months, or whenever. I thought that was really fascinating because they really hammered him. I'm just sitting there going, yes, cool. But we were starting to get the point across. So obviously, they're all the customers that they thought should have been. All right, so we started to generate lots and lots of really, really good ideas. We broke the organisation down into supporting services and critical services. And from all of this information, by the end of the day, we started to generate these questions. So this is what they came up with, which is really cool. Who are we? What do we do? What are the rules of the game? Who helps us? Where are we going? And who do we work for? Then I gave homework. We had 2 weeks between this session and the next one. The first week I got nothing in response. The homework was, answer these questions for me. Not only answer these questions, imagine that these were sites and give me a name of each of these sites. And then when you've given me a name of the site, tell me what's in it. Tell me what it's about. Okay? And they did it. The second week rolls out and I get pages and pages and pages and pages of information. We printed it all out, it was about that thick, ridiculous. But it was awesome because it obviously showed that they were paying attention. So they broke it down into our people, roles and responsibilities, vendor management, supporting our business, strategy and direction, working together, and of course the document center, which we talked about. Now you're probably looking at that and going, it's pretty, not rocket science come to sort of that arrangement with respect to how the solution's going to be built. But for them it was. And this is the thing. I had their buy-in. They were the ones that came up with this information. Okay? So when it came to the actual document aspect of things, pieces of the puzzle sort of started to fit together. They wanted our people because one of the issues that they had was that they were a very siloed organisation and it was very hard to gather information about people who work in different areas, or if people moved from one prison to another prison, you know, where their details were held. So we came up with this. So, you know, that's kind of HR and a few other bits and pieces. And there was nowhere really to go to gather information about you know, HR-related issues or different bits and pieces. Rules and responsibilities. Hey, it's the Department of Correctional Services. They live and die by rules, literally, actually. So they wanted somewhere where all the legislation, the policies, guidelines and procedures were held. Okay? Then offender management. So this is the core of their business. So this is, how I was talking about the customer journey through the organisation, pretty much lives in offender management. So what they were then able to do is that they were then able to go, okay, now let's break it down into our prisons and our other facilities and other parts of our organisations that actually dealt with prisoners. So there was one sort of site that actually held all this information. And then we had, obviously, supporting our businesses. So that was volunteer organisations, internal external services that provided support to what they do. Strategy and direction. One of the big complaints that we got out of people on the shop floor, so to speak, was that they didn't know where the organisation was heading. And the information that they got out of the senior management team was sporadic, it wasn't consistent. And that was something that they were really trying to address. And then working together, an area where they could collaborate and share information with you as well. From there, we took our people and we got together a different team of people that work within our people. So HR and a few other areas. And we broke that down further into pages with employee essentials, industrial relations, staff wellbeing, workplace, WHS, and staff direction. So we did that for all of them. So you can imagine we're starting to generate a whole lot of information, but we're starting to generate a structure as well. We then reconciled that against documents. So I told them to go and get a whole lot of documents from that particular area and see whether it fits. And it did, which was a really cool part. They can actually go, okay, this document here, actually that fits in employee essentials, it's this, it's a form, it's whatever. And we could do the same thing with the rest of them as well. So once we've then done that, we took all of that information and we created a document. We created a massive document, which is basically a design document, which had wireframes, which had library structures, metadata structures, because in the background, because we've created this architecture, that actually creates a metadata structure as well. So we created this massive document that covered how the system was to be built, because one of the reasons we did that is because we weren't building the system. So I wanted to make sure that they built our vision. There's questions about that, but anyway. But we made the document very accurate, and in the document itself, we set it up like this. So, unfortunately, being Department of Correctional Services, I couldn't show you guys very much. The only thing I could actually show you was one of the pages. But what we started to do was map it out like this. So when the guys actually came to building it, they had an understanding of what we were trying to achieve. And what's actually been built looks a lot better than this, and they've done a really fantastic job. But what it started to do is to drill down and go, okay, they want prisoner numbers or bed count every day. How's that updated? What's the process with respect to that? Because everything that I'm doing within the organisation was very manual as well. So at the moment, that's an Excel spreadsheet that gets updated and emailed out to everyone. Okay? That will now get turned into someone manually entering that into the solution. And you go, you're manually entering it in there. Yep, but it's a start. The next step is to make sure that the data that comes out of the information system that they currently use to get those numbers out of is correct enough to not have to have a person in the middle to fill out those numbers. And they'll get to that point. Weeks events, announcements, and all the other stuff that gets pieces. They wanted a Twitter feed on there as well. Twitter's very important to the Department of Correctional Services. Believe it or not. So I guess it comes back to, if you build your intranet solutions for the people that are going to use it, you've got a better chance of them using it. So we did all that. We created the design document. We had quite a fat document. The next thing they wanted to do was make sure that everyone within the organisation knew about it. This was the fun part. I thought it was interesting before, it got more interesting now because I had to go to the prisons. So I visited 6 sites all up. The first site that we went to was okay, room full of 30 people. They listened to what we had to say, they listened to how we designed it. They'd already had, we created like a mini document for them, they'd already read through it, they made some good notes, got some good ideas. Yeah, pretty nonplussed. We weren't really that excited or disheartened about it. The second site we went to, they were awesome. They were a prison, just out of Adelaide. It was basically with the guys who were the prison guards and the management team there. They were really, really, really good. They didn't care about the other part, they cared about offender management and how it was going to look for prisons. They also cared about the fact that within the Department of Correctional Services they have SOPs, LOPs, SOPs and LOPs. So a standard operating procedure and a local operating procedure. Now you can imagine you don't want too many LOPs because you want them to be SOPs. It's like this.
So what they want is that they want less local operating procedures, they want more standard operating procedures, so it reduces the amount of documentation. Because effectively the processes that they use at the prisons are pretty similar. There might be some caveats because of the way the prison is structured or those kind of things, but they're trying to reduce the amount of documentation they've got. So we talked about all that kind of stuff, and they were really, really good. Went to 2 other facilities, same sort of thing, they weren't too bad. Then we went to the main prison, where one person turned up for the presentation. It's a bit hard. Had a room like this, one person sitting in front there, and the team that I was working with standing here. Oh, this is not going to work. So I said, all right, let's all go around in a circle, and I put a desk and I put my laptop, and I said, okay, we'll just go through what we've been doing and all that kind of stuff. And he goes, oh, it's not going to work. And I said, why is it not going to work? And he said, oh, because you're expecting that people can use computers. Yeah. Is that too much of a stretch? And he said, yeah, well, we've had no training on how to use computers. And I'm like, okay, how old are you? He goes, oh, I'm 36. He was 3 years younger than me. And I went, okay. Now, do the people you work with have phones? Oh, yeah, they've got phones. Do they have smartphones? Yeah, they've got smartphones. They're using computers! Don't tell me they're not using computers. This is designed to be intuitive so they can. But he couldn't get out of his head the fact that we would need to teach people how to turn computers on in order to be able to use an intranet. The other thing that he said was, yeah, we've got a bit of an issue with one of the guys here who doesn't read emails. I said, oh, what do you mean? Well, the IT department is now sending him letters because he won't check his email and his email box is full all the time. So he wrote a letter back to the IT department asking how they could put a rule on his email to delete all new emails. So this is the technology level we're kind of dealing with. So it was a bit of a challenge. And then the last facility that I went to, basically, they were more interested in telling me about all their IT issues and they didn't listen to anything that we sort of said. So it's a slow-moving train. So basically now we have the master builders come in and they're currently building the system, and one of the reasons why my offsider from the project itself isn't here is because we're doing all the training now. The system is actually being built and we're currently doing training with respect to how it's going to work and operate within the facility. It's going to be a phased-in approach. This is something that is going to be gradual, it's going to take time, and I would suspect in a year's time they'll be a little bit further ahead than where they currently are now, but it is going to take time. Because for the organisation, technology isn't in the forefront of their mind, doing their job is in the forefront of their mind, and you can't criticise them for that. But it's a matter of introducing the technology in a way that they actually understand as well. And that's what they're currently working through. Cool. Any questions?
When you asked them to go away and do their homework and they brought you back where they thought that information should sit, what did you do? How did you collate that? Did you have sessions with them to start bringing it all together to come up with that navigation? Because they must have come back with different ideas.
They did. And what we did is that we'd get together as a group, people working on the solution, and we nutted out and really try and take all of their information and massive whiteboard sessions to translate what they were trying to achieve, what they were telling us, into a usable solution. So we spent many, many hours just trying to take all of their pieces of information to work out how we can actually get it to fit for them. Yes?
You must have had a lot of new hires to actually work with SharePoint. SharePoint is just not one person operation.
Yeah, very much so. So within the Department of Correctional Services, they put some more people on to work on their SharePoint solution. Because you can imagine this is, SharePoint is a journey, not a destination. And it was one of the biggest things I had to get through to the IT department in the beginning. Because they very much have the mentality that it's set and forget. So the concept of having an evolving platform or solution really was quite foreign to them. The other thing that's quite foreign to them is the fact that they didn't have the keys to the car. Okay? They didn't like the fact that people could change or update information on the solution itself. So the way it currently stands is that IT update all documents on their current intranet. It doesn't get past IT, it doesn't get up there. It's a really interesting concept. So yeah, there's been lots of cultural change within the actual organisation itself, especially in the IT department. So we're having one interesting meeting where we're doing an introduction. This is at head office with a large group of people. and we had someone from the IT team there. And he said to me, I'm not implementing this, I'm not going to be involved in this because it's going to be so much more work using this SharePoint thingy than our current solution. And I said, have you looked at SharePoint? And he went, no, never looked at it, can't be bothered doing it, and it's just not going to work. Kind of got told in no uncertain terms that maybe you should go away and actually have a look at it. But this is the kind of challenges that we have along the way to try and get people to adopt it. Because normally what I'm finding is that 3 years ago, the IT departments would be very much against any SharePoint or the challenges of it. But IT departments are evolving and developing, and they're actually starting to understand the benefit of what you can actually do with SharePoint. Yes?
So how long did the whole project take from inception to?
6 or 7 months.
And one last question was, you put together the governance structure. How did you go about that? Yeah, talk to the IT team.
So you're talking about?
Like who's going to own which parts
Ah,
of it?
all right.
Who's going to update it? Who's going to maintain it?
Yeah, so that was also interesting conversations. So what's happened is that we created like a matrix structure for each of the sites with respect to permissions and ownership and all that kind of stuff as well. And what's happening is that within each of the functional areas, they're actually going to have people designated that's now going to be part of their role. Because that's the other thing too, is that because this is government, it's not just a matter of going, hey, you're looking after that, you're looking after that kind of thing. They've had to actually write it into their job descriptions as well. So there's a fair few challenges in that. But because of the way we've designed it, because of I guess the enthusiasm we've actually been able to generate, people are excited about being involved in it, and that has helped, I guess, break down some of the barriers. Yep.
What kind of characteristics did you look for in those people that I guess were you picked up from across the business to help kind of champion that change? Or did you just
handed them basically.
Okay.
So I had questioned them about that, and they said that they wanted a real mix of people and cross-discipline and all that kind of stuff. And in the end, we had a really, really good group. But I'm not going to say it was easy and everyone was willing to be on the journey straight away. It was hard work to get people to start to think about things in a different way. One of the questions that I did ask in the very first session is that if you were the director for the day, what would you change and what would you do? And some of them couldn't answer the question. Oh, we don't want to say anything just in case it's held against us. You're in a safe space. I've got no recording equipment. I'll give you a hug, you're fine. But some of them wouldn't answer that. Yeah. But it's amazing that was the attitude or the response that you kind of got. I was thinking, how am I going to get anything out of you guys if you're not willing to think freely? That 5S exercise really helped because in the room I also had some senior guys that day as well. So who were the ones I picked on? Senior guys. Let the team down. You didn't do a very good job, did you? Kind of thing. So it kind of helped mix that dynamic up and started to free the conversation up a bit. But yeah, there was some of those personal limitations involved as well. Yep.
How do you go about pulling the internet away from IT? Because our intranet, in local government, our intranet was developed, obviously, I instigated it in IT, but to try and step back from it to let someone who should be leading where an intranet should be going rather than the IT team?
So that's a really good question because I guess it shapes back to me building my company. The second person that I employed was actually a business analyst. She had virtually no SharePoint experience whatsoever. She's been working for me for a year now. She's a gun on SharePoint, but she also understands business requirements. So the first person I put on was technically brilliant, and he can build anything within SharePoint, which is fantastic because I can dream it up and he can build it. And then there was Yami, and she's a business analyst, so she understands what it is to extract business requirements, and she understands what I'm talking about with the customer journey and all that kind of stuff. And to learn SharePoint, you can do it. Like, she doesn't code in SharePoint, she doesn't write any code at all, but she builds a lot of out-of-the-box solutions which are quite amazing, especially when it comes to forms and other bits and pieces. What I've found is that you need someone that has that half and half understanding. They've got a bit of IT understanding, Now, I'm not saying Fiona doesn't understand IT at all, she does, she's really good. But what I've found is that organisations that are quite successful with having someone taking it away from the IT team are the ones that have employed someone or had someone on board, a business analyst, with a bit of an IT bent, and they've gained the confidence of the IT department, and they've just sort of trusted, because that's effectively how I started.
With business analysts versus business improvement team, because our business improvement team never seems to improve anything, throws everything in a mess and leaves on to the next company having to bid. And so, yeah, that's sort of, is that what you mean? Might be the same thing.
Yeah, one of the yeah, pretty much. So I worked in the automotive industry for a while as well, so I don't know exactly like how those teams work, because I was generally the one that would sweep up afterwards and they'd go, oh, look at all the efficiency improvements that they've made, how fantastic is that? Like, I'm the one that's actually iced the cake, and anyway. But yeah, you're right. But I think it's all about having skin in the game, and also ensuring that the business improvement teams actually understand how people are currently working. Because what I quite often find is that those sort of teams look at things on the surface, make their recommended, low-hanging fruit, so to speak, when I'm talking lean terms, and that's the improvements that they make. So, but yeah, you really do need someone that's a business analyst with a bit of an IT bent. So, you have a question? Yeah.
So you mentioned that you're in the training phase of this project?
Yeah.
So do you have a strategy on the ongoing engagement? Like where do you have like?
So I've got some pretty defined strategies about how you should build SharePoint solutions. And for this, obviously, this was a fairly large scale, but they paid me, a fair bit of money to do this because it was a long-term, it was quite a large design project, and it was good because it gave us the freedom to actually really push the design with respect to how they wanted it. So moving forward, they're obviously doing training now, but one of the things that I've told them is that they must continue to do constant training with the team and having the guys who are the champions for each of them being approached them as well. The other thing is that they're obviously going to continue to do further development. We're going to do some more design stuff. But I want it to always be broken down into incremental changes, not massive changes. Because then they can do an incremental change, get the buy-in from the people who are actually going to use the system before they move on to the next step. Because what quite often happens is I go, okay, just for cost's sake, we've got these 3 projects that we want to do, let's bundle them all in one, get them all done at the same time, there you go. What happens is the system never actually gets used to its full potential.
Have they implemented a SharePoint system owner or an intranet owner as part of this implementation?
Yep.
So that would be a new hire alongside of this project?
Yep. And there were 2 or 3, there was a couple of new hires.
Right.
So for the project. And that was all built into their costing at the beginning. It was quite clear that they would. So basically I've done this project through e-government, we work with the Department of Correctional Services. And in the beginning, when we had the meetings, they said, there's going to need to be some more staff in the solution and stuff. Because their aim is to take it further than what we've done. We've only just built the building, is how they continue to develop it. That's the key.
And so where do those owners actually sit within the organisation?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I got to see Department of Correctional Services that much, and it's pretty scary, some of the stuff they deal with. But yeah, I'm not quite sure. Where they do, actually, that's not quite true. At prisons, they're not senior people within the prison, and in some of the other facilities, it's the same thing. It's not necessarily a senior person that's going to own the information or the documentation. They've got specifically allocated roles for people who own documents within certain areas and information.
Prisons are fairly heavily unionised environments. Did you find a lot of pushback, particularly from union-based people?
Yeah, there was a little bit, but they sort of, when they kind of realised that it might make their job easier to do,
Yeah.
they kind of backed off a little bit. So they kind of went away altogether. So, because ultimately that was it, and that's what I kept reminding the guys, is that we're not designing this for anyone else, we're designing it for you, the people who are actually going to use the solution. And you tended to find that they really bought into that.
Was there much content kept from that legacy intranet, or did they just junk most of it?
No, there's a whole transition phase going on at the moment. So they're currently going to introduce this one in line with their own system as well, and then migrating all the documentation across. yeah, there's still some things in the old system that they're going to keep for a little while, but that will eventually be phased out. Because like if they cut the intranet off today and they introduce this, like the world would end according to the Department of Correctional Services. So it would cause mass panic, everyone would walk out.
Are they able to do it? Able to do it?
Oh, I haven't actually been involved in that part. I'm not sure how they're doing it. They're actually got another company.
Does the intranet have any other functionality around, like user self-service type scenario? For example, like HR kiosks where they can request leave and things like that?
Yep.
So is that part of your project as well?
Sorry. I didn't actually include that in here.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, we did. Part of the brief was that we had, I think, 3 forms and a few workflows. So there's a leave request form, there was suggestion form, some feedback form, some type. There was something else as well. Incident, I think, as well. So yeah, there was a bit of that.
Also, like incident, like HC style, right?
Yep. Yep. So there was a fair bit of that sort of went on. That was what my business analyst, she was doing that as well with them. So.
Was it all out of the box functionality, or did they custom work?
No, most of it was out of the box. So yeah, vast majority was out of the box. The only thing that wasn't out of the box was the theme. They purchased the theme, and they've created a couple of, since the other developers come on board, they created a couple of apps. Instead of using something that had a functionality, they wanted to bundle it with what they had lots of different.
How do you measure the business benefit and their return on investment?
I'm not sure. We haven't. Anything that we give them will be better than what they had. I can guarantee you that. Yeah, they haven't actually put any metrics in place with respect to business benefit and all that yet. I know that's something that they are looking at trying to, I guess, justify in some respects, the improvements that they've made in the new system. But yeah, they're still on that journey.
Have they even got to the point of knowing what they're wanting to, their KPIs and so on? What their improvements are?
Yeah, they're getting there. Yeah, some say yes, some say no. So.
Did you do any user experience work with them to try and come up with an interface that would be consumable by a corrections officer? That's why I asked, because I thought it would be an interesting exercise if you had.
Okay. So we didn't build the system. That doesn't mean I haven't been back in and talked about it, discussed it with them. Because what I found is that the people building the system, they were doing a really, really good job, but they didn't seem to understand the concept of if someone's looking for something and you can provide them with a big red button in the middle of the screen that they can hit and it takes them exactly where they want to go, they'll use it. I kind of got lost in that a bit. So we have done a little bit of redesign work with respect to, because if you go back to that slide there, you notice that we had some icons at the top here, which were meant to be icons. And yeah, some of that stuff's being put back down. The biggest argument that we've had is with respect to drop-down menus. Okay? Because they wanted mega menus. Right. They needed to have mega menus. And it was every single meeting, are we going to have mega? No, forget the mega menus. We're going to design a usable UI that's going to be intuitive to use. Does it have a mega menu? Oh. So in the end, they've got their mega menus. I came up with that one. But yeah, there has been a bit of work, and they're now doing a bit of the testing, UI testing with some of the guys in the SharePoint.
Cool. So, all right.
Cool. More questions?
Just on document management with intranet site, how do you typically manage that whole classification scheme of documents and all that sort of thing? Is there I don't know if there's a plugin that you use, or I'm trying to deal with that at the moment with our intranet site also being document management, and there are obviously a variety of different libraries and different requirements, but I guess where do you begin with that?
Cool. All right. Another hour? Yeah. All right. Your question's really good. And a lot of the organisations that I go to really struggle with that. They'll still have files and folders and all that kind of stuff within their document libraries. And as we know with SharePoint, you can create a metadata structure. If you use a metadata structure correctly, you can create filtered views of document libraries, which can be really handy because you can have the same document available in multiple locations but it's only the same document. We all know. To actually get to the point where you have a metadata structure which suits the company is really challenging. And that's where I was when I was at the steel company. Because I had this massive file folder structure that was chaos, I had to somehow work it out so that I could stick it, because I like to use pretty much one document library for documents where the permissions aren't an issue. Yeah, you use different document libraries for different permissions and all, but using the one document library, and you might have 1,000, 1,500 documents in that document library. If you create an appropriate metadata structure, it can work. And that's one of the reasons why I design solutions like I do, because you can do that kind of thing. So how we've got the document center over here, the document center actually has pretty much one document library in it, because most of the documents have the same permission level. I think it worked out something like 80% of documents have the same permission level. So they sit within the document center. We use this as a metadata structure, okay? It's tagged with our people. It's tagged with employee essentials. Then it won't be tagged with document type. It might be, you know, we broke employee essentials down a little bit further. But that's effectively what we've done. So that's how we've created that metadata structure. Now the cool part about that is that when it sits in the document library, the aim is for when people upload documents for it to be intuitive, for people to actually understand it, because they can see the tree structure and how we've actually created the sitemap, so to speak. And that's an intuitive way for them to answer the questions. Because if you don't do that and you don't have this visual representation of how your sites go together, you often find that it's really hard for people to classify documents. And you know, I've been to some organisations now, quite large organisations, where they had like 50 questions that had to be completed in order to put a document into the document library. And you get to question 27 and it says, is it R2D2, C3PO, or, you know, and you say to someone, well, what's the answer to that question? They go, oh, I have no idea. I say, okay, well, why don't you complain and get it taken off? And they said, oh, we went to the IT department, they don't know what it was for, but the company that came in and built the solution told us it had to be there. You do own the solution, don't you? You use yours. The other company doesn't anyway. So yeah, that's why I kind of that's why I try and do these sort of design exercises, to give it a bit of metadata structure. And it kind of works. Well, I think it does. And it seems to work pretty well. Oh, just one point. Your point's really good because some of the other customers that I've worked with, a really good example is CDVS, which is a Centre for Domestic Violence Against Women. Okay? They're pretty non-tech savvy too. They're very non-tech savvy. And when we came in, and the director, she said, I wanted an intranet site. And we looked at her file folder structure, and it was all structured in the way the management team looked at the organisation. I said, how does that work for the people who work within the organisation? And she said, it doesn't. It's part of the problem. We want you to sort it out. I said, well, what do? They counsel. Cool. That's easy. What are they counselling? Oh, there's 12 different topics that they counsel in. I'm like, okay, well, let's break the information and documentation down in that way. So we looked at the 12 different types of counselling, what they were, and we pretty much broke it down into this sort of structure. So we had a site, we had 12 pages, each of the documents with, you could select which of the pages it would belong on. We then stuck the contacts for that particular type of counselling on it. We put a description for that particular type of counselling. We created that like information portal and the metadata structure. Now when we introduced that, so it's got a page with 12 buttons on it. When we introduced that to the staff, and we said, okay, do you understand how to use this? They went, yep, click that button, click that button. And one of the girls pulled out her tablet and said, yeah, it works on here too, look at that, how cool is that? But it was making it really easy and intuitive. You know, and they're the cool wins. But that wouldn't have happened unless I'd created the right metadata structure that allowed the management team to look at the documents they wanted in the way they wanted to look at it, but also the employees to look at documents in the way they needed to look at it.
So you answered the question, so.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So the document center that you have in that model, was that just to support the intranet side that you have, so the policies and procedures and employee essentials, What is the document centre? Is that the collaboration platform
No.
for the entire organisation?
No, it's documents for the entire organisation live within here. And what happens is that when they're reviewed and then published, they then will be displayed within the areas based on the metadata and how it breaks it down.
So if they were going to create a document to start working on within a team, they do it in the document centre, and then at some point it get published as a major version or something, and then it comes up on the.
Yep.
How did they go learning that process of the minor and major versioning in SharePoint?
Oh, they're still working through it.
Yep.
Hey, this is what they were asked to do. This is a journey they wanted to go on. So no, actually they've got a document control area within the organisation, and they're picking it up pretty well. So they kind of had those informal processes in place before, but now they've actually got them. Cool. All right.